Hello and welcome to this Friday afternoon and how to have difficult conversations and do them well. This is a taster session. It's a very quick and dirty 25-30 minute session just to give you some insights into what it is that you find difficult about those conversations and some tips and pointers, some guidelines in terms of what you can do to have them well. So let's get started as we don't have much time. So just take a moment and in the chat box, if you can introduce yourself, say a little bit about who you are, what you do, if you don't mind. But more importantly than that, it's just tell me what you're looking to get out of this session. So what is it that you want to get out from this quick 30 minutes? Why did you sign up? So I'll just give you a moment to do that. Okay, so we've got, what have we got? Find certain conversations difficult and want to get some tips. Yeah. Just want to find more about what you could do differently. Yeah. Build on some skills. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like most of you are in the right place. So let's get started. Brilliant. So just very quickly, this is me. I'm Chrissy. My business is uTransition, and I specialise in coaching leaders, but specifically around leadership development. So helping either that individual leader or the leader in their teams and their business to build their skill set, their knowledge, their skills, think about their behaviours so that they can improve their personal performance, through that the performance of their team, and then ultimately through that the performance of the business. My background is corporate operational roles and corporate learning and development backgrounds. And since I've had my own business, I've worked in both corporate and small businesses. And I now predominantly work with small businesses that have small teams and are typically, but not always, in that professional background, professional services type background, or a digital background. So people that have had a lot of technical skills, training, qualifications to get to the place that they're at, but they don't often have management and leadership support or training as part of that professional training. And I can come in and help them to think about what it is that they need either for themselves or for their teams to support from that management and leadership development background. But ultimately, the thing that I've learned most, either in my own corporate career or from working with people in businesses, is the bottom point on the screen, that it doesn't actually matter what you know. The success, leadership success particularly, comes from the application of that knowledge. So there's a big difference, there's a big gap between knowing that you should do something and even knowing how to do it, but actually doing it and putting it into practice. And that for me really is the foundation of having a difficult conversation. Very often, we should be having them, and very often we might even know how to have them. But for some reason, there's something that's stopping us or holding us back. And sometimes that is because there's a mind block, a mindset, or a belief block. Sometimes it is we just don't know how to have that conversation. We don't have the skill. And maybe there's something else going on. So this workshop is really intended to do three things. So help you identify those conversations that will make a difference. So what are those difficult conversations that should be happening, but perhaps aren't for whatever reason, either within the area that you manage or within your business, and perhaps have a think about why that might be. Then I'm going to very quickly touch on what happens to us as individuals, as humans, because of that avoidance. And then finish up with some tips to help you be able to have those conversations more effectively and more confidently in the workplace. So for a moment, I'd just like you to think about the conversations that you view as difficult. So just take a moment, think about your business or the role that you're in. If you're managing a team in a bigger business, maybe think about different types of people that you want to have or need to have conversations with. What, in your view, are the types of things that make them feel difficult or make you view them as difficult? And just make a note of those things for yourself. Okay, so hopefully you've got some things jotted down there. A CMI 2020 report did some research and found that there were 4 key things that generically everybody pretty much finds difficult. So pay rises, asking for a pay rise or asking for a bonus or asking for some form of monetary increase, pretty much everybody finds difficult. So that came out top at 33%. Having to then deal with or tackle, face into or report or respond to inappropriate behaviour in the workplace, that was 31%, so quite close for those two. Giving feedback on poor performance at 30%, and then asking for a promotion or talking about your career kind of progression at 23%. So some very big topics there, some big chunks. Now, I don't remember the exact percentage, but apparently people generically find it more challenging to ask for a pay rise than they do to end their relationship. So just some things to think about. We're not alone. Everybody, no matter who we are, no matter what role we have, no matter where we work, no matter what's going on in our personal lives, we will all have conversations that we view as difficult for some reason or another. And it might not be the same conversation every time. It might be a different conversation. It might be the same conversation that we find easier with some people, but not with others. So just encourage you to have a think about, first of all, what are those conversations that you find difficult? And then what's the context within which you find them difficult? Is it with a particular person? Is it within a certain situation? Is it when a certain series of events or things has happened around that? So it's more situational. All of these things come into play, and all of these things will make a difference and perhaps help you or hinder you in terms of having that conversation. But if the thought of having a difficult conversation at work, really fills you with dread, or you can see it filling your team leaders or the managers in your business with dread, then, they're not alone. The results on the screen there are, as I say, pretty generic, but everybody fears conversations for different reasons at different times. And the thing to remember is that those things that we are putting off, those conversations that we are viewing as difficult, are often the conversations that need to be had. And they're often the conversations that will really make a difference, either to that individual or to the team or to the business overall, and equally to us as managers. So if you're noticing that there is a conversation you are putting off, I'd also encourage you to think about what's the reason you're putting it off, and what would the difference be if you had that conversation. So think about for a moment, in your world, in the role that you do, in the business that you work in, what are the conversations that really make a difference in your world? If these were conversations that were to be had, that wouldn't be put off, what would be those things that would absolutely make a difference? And just take a moment to jot those down. Okay. So what I'd like to do next then is, again, just take that one step further and think about, if we're not having these conversations, what is the impact to you, to your team, and ultimately to your business in not having them? And think about the experiences that you've got already. Think about what is going on or what has gone on in either the role that you do or the business that you work on. when those conversations have been put off, what was the impact either to you, your team, or your business? And again, just take a moment to think about that. So there's 5 reasons that we typically avoid conversations. So just put a smiley face or a sad face or a thumbs up or a relevant emoji in the chat if these resonate with you. Fear is the first one. So maybe a fear of not knowing how the other person is going to respond, or fear that you're not going to be able to get your point across properly, or maybe fear that you think the person's going to storm out of the room or cry, or you're not going to be able to deal with the emotion that perhaps you perceive they're going to react with. Not knowing how to have the conversation, so being fearful of that. Lack of time. So that's usually one that gets thrown up for a whole multitude of things, not just difficult conversations. I'm too busy to do it right now. It's not the biggest priority right now. Oh, it's not my job. Thinking about time, if you can recognise that you're putting off something because of a lack of time, there's usually another reason that we're using time as the excuse that's a bit deeper. So have a think about, if you're using time as an excuse, what might be the additional reasons perhaps for that. Maybe you've had a previous bad experience. Maybe you've had this conversation or tried to have it before, and perhaps all of the things that you're fearful of did happen. So maybe somebody did get upset, or maybe somebody did storm out of the room, or maybe you forgot what you had to say, or you stumbled over your words, or you know, something else kind of happened, but it went wrong. It didn't go the way you wanted it to, the way you planned it to, and you've kind of got this feeling of, I'm never going there again. Maybe you don't think you're the right person to have it. Maybe you think that, you know, because you're not necessarily maybe the line manager, it's not your job to have it. Or maybe because you didn't see it or experience it, you're hearing it third hand, perhaps you're not the right person to have it. You know, a whole host of other reasons as to why you might think you're not the right person to have this conversation. And then one I come across quite a lot is wanting to be liked. So if I say this, they won't like me. They'll hold it against me. They won't respect me. Well, actually, maybe they might respect you more for having the conversation ultimately. So just have a think. Do these things resonate with you? Just pop in the chat now. Thumbs up or a smiley face or a sad face or a thumbs down or whatever. So yeah, couple of thumbs up. Yeah. Yes, resonates with me. Yeah. And again, you know, these aren't the only 5 reasons. There will be other reasons that might be more personal to you. So again, I'd encourage you to think about, what are the reasons that you are avoiding or you put off those conversations that you perceive to be more difficult. So very quickly, I'm just going to put some scenarios on the screen here. These may be relevant to your business, they may not. But, you know, things like you need to talk to an experienced employee who might be turning up late for work repeatedly. You might want to talk to a client because they're unhappy about the attitude of a team member, or maybe they've made a complaint, or they've made a complaint about a level of service or a particular product. Maybe you want to talk to somebody who seems to be having regular sick days, or somebody that's avoiding doing particular tasks or not performing appropriately. Maybe there's somebody that shows real potential for the future but doesn't recognise it in themselves, and you want to encourage their development. All of these conversations in and of themselves can be quite simple, but they can also appear to be difficult conversations as well. So again, just jot down for a moment, what are your versions of these, either in your role or within your business? What are the scenarios, conversations, the roles, the things that happen every day, every week, that are an opportunity to have a conversation that ultimately will make a difference, but is put off because perhaps we perceive them to be difficult. And maybe we're using some of those 5 excuses that I shared on the previous screen as to not to have them. Okay, so just want to touch quickly on what happens to us. So when we are avoiding conversations, when we are putting things off, when we're procrastinating, we experience different signs, different expressions of that that stress, that anxiety, that whatever it is that's going on. So close your eyes for just a moment and think about that conversation that I asked you to think about earlier. So the conversation that perhaps you've put off or have been putting off, and just think about what happens to you. So where do you notice, or what do you notice goes on for you when you put off those conversations? Because pretty much we all experience the same types of things. So we will have physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, or behavioural symptoms. Depending on the conversation, we may experience all 3. We may experience one or a combination of. But it's important that you notice when these things are going on for you, and notice what they are, because they'll usually show up before you are aware that you're actually putting off this conversation. So they'll act as triggers or act as indicators to you that you can pay attention to, that you can notice, and you can then learn to deal with or learn to do things differently with. So the first one is physical signs of stress or anxiety. So putting things off, not having conversations, causes us to experience physical signs. So it might be stress, it might be anxiety, it might be frustration, whatever it is, but that will usually manifest itself in some way, like perhaps sweating or increased heart rate, shallow breathing. Maybe we get that ache, that feeling in the pit of our stomach. Maybe we get a dry throat and can't quite get our words out. Maybe we've got a headache or tension, but there'll be physical signs that indicate to us we are under stress. We'll get emotional signs. So we may experience a strong emotional response. We may feel fearful or angry or frustrated or upset. It may be that we can't quite put a name on the emotion, but we can just kind of feel it welling up inside us. And then there'll be behavioural signs. So we might be avoiding something or someone, or engaging in unhelpful behaviours. So if you are familiar with the flight or fight responses that we've kind of got built into us, and we've had since our cavemen times, that keep us safe. When we fear things, when we are experiencing stress, anxiety, fear, we either, well, we do several things, but one of them is we flight, so we run away from it, we avoid. So you might leave the conversation, you might put it off, you might procrastinate, or we fight. So you might become aggressive or angry or blurt out the thing that you have been keeping in for a long time, or you've been putting off avoiding. You might raise your voice, you might get angry. So noticing and knowing what those behavioural signs are really important, because once you know them and you notice them, one, as I say, that's an indicator that you can pay attention to, that will give you a clue perhaps that something has been or is being put off. This difficult conversation needs to be had, and you're avoiding it. Or equally, if it's happening in the moment, the more aware you are of it, the more able you are to, in that moment, take notice and put some strategies and techniques in place to bring yourself down to that more even keel, to that more balanced level, and therefore regain your emotional or physical behavioural composure, so that you're doing what's right for you and also the individual. So crucial conversations, difficult conversations, as I mentioned, if a conversation is difficult, it's often a conversation that needs to be had. It's often, therefore, a crucial conversation. Don't tend to put off conversations that are easy. We don't tend to put off conversations that really are inconsequential. There's a book called Crucial Conversations by Patterson, Grenny, Macmillan and Switzler, called Crucial Conversations. And in that book, it's a great read. They put forward the idea that there are actually 3 reasons why a conversation is difficult, or is crucial, and therefore why we might find it difficult. First one is about having high stakes. So, you know, the stakes are high. Something might happen as a result, or might not happen as a result of this conversation, or us not getting our view across, or not getting our win, if you like. So stakes are really high. It might be that we've got differing views, so your view might be completely different to mine, and therefore we can't agree. Therefore, there is no common ground, and perhaps that's the reason why I'm putting it off, because I know you've got a different view to me, and that's going to be difficult in and of itself. And maybe there's strong emotions. Maybe I feel really strongly about something, you feel really strongly about it, and the two of us can't agree to be in the same place. Sometimes it's one of those things. Very often it's a combination of those things, and also equally very often we'll get ourselves to the point where, you know, maybe it starts off perhaps, for example, with differing views. We have a differing view that leads to then build strong emotions. Those strong emotions ultimately, and the differing views, then build to the point where ultimately the stakes become even higher than they were. So think about the conversation that you've identified, that you've been putting off perhaps, and maybe have a think about, is it crucial? Is it being avoided? And because of one of those 3 reasons. So are there differing views? Are there strong emotions? And if there are, what are those strong emotions? And what are the high stakes? Are there high stakes? And think about it not just from your perspective, but from the perspective of the other person as well. So we're nearly coming to the end of kind of the whistle stop tour. So just some a 6-step process really to how to have these conversations well. The first step for me is all the stuff that we've really been talking about in the first 25 minutes or so. It's that recognition about the conversations that you're having, the conversations equally that you're not having, and what you're putting, the reasons that you're putting them off. What are you putting them off for? Is it a situation? Is it a person? Is it a context? And thinking about the impact that that is having to you as an individual, as a leader, to your team, and to the business ultimately. And then it's about recognizing from the triangle, why am I putting them off? Is it because it's a difficult conversation where we've got differing views, where stakes are high, or maybe the emotions are just at that point of blowing over, or blowing up, sorry, so that they are that high, we can't have this conversation. What are the things that I experience and notice in me? So what are the physical signs? What are the emotional signs? What are the behavioural signs? If you can notice all of that, capture all of that thing, content, you'll be better placed to then go into the 6 steps that I'm about to share with you now. So conversations, when you plan them out, when you put a process in place, it will make it easier for you to have those conversations and have them well. So we can ultimately all have conversations, have difficult conversations, and do them badly. But the effect of that is going to be that we ultimately keep then putting them off in the future because we've got experience that shows us we didn't do a good job, or we lose trust from our team because we didn't do those things effectively. We didn't do them well. So first step for me is purpose. Think about the purpose for your conversation. What is it that you want to say? Why are you having this conversation? Why do you want to have this conversation with this person? And what is your ideal outcome? So is it that I want to have this conversation with somebody because they are turning up for work late, and the outcome I want is that I'd like them to understand that this isn't acceptable, that they are contracted for particular hours, and my expectation is that they will be here on time. But I also want to understand if they have a particular challenge going on in their personal life that I'm not aware of, that perhaps I can support with. So what is your purpose? And have a check-in with yourself before you write this down. What is your personal intent for this conversation? Do you have what I would call positive intent? So are you having it because you want to help solve this thing, this issue, this thing that's going on? Do you want to get a solution? Are you doing it for all the right reasons? And therefore, if you come at it from the right place, because it's to improve performance, or to be fair to the team, or to help someone understand what they're not doing correctly, to help somebody learn, grow, stretch, etc., keep somebody safe, improve client care, patient care, customer care, whatever it is, if it's coming from a place of heart, really, I care, then that's the right place to start. If it's coming from a place of anger, frustration, annoyance, then you need to stop, calm down, and wait until you're in that place of having that conversation, wanting to have that conversation for all the right reasons. The next one is then prepare. So having a conversation laid out, prepared, and structured, whilst you can't have all of it done because the conversations are, need to take place in the moment and the here and now. But having a structure that you've prepared and thought about will absolutely help you. So you need to think about collating your facts. What's the evidence? What's the data? What is the absolute, objective, non-arguable criteria that you can share with the other person, and that they can't dispute? So, if somebody is turning up late or not turning up on time, you can't just say to somebody, well, I think you've been late 3 days this week. You have to have the facts. Have you got a clocking in system? Have you got some way of checking when they did actually show up, when they did actually clock in or out, or what days of the week, so that you can factually be accurate? Consider what you want to say. So, jot down notes, things that you want to get across, points that you want to make so that you won't forget them. And anything that you need in there to remind you to stay objective as well. You also need to be aware of your emotions. So being really key about what is it, or where are you starting at? So in that conversation, when you're having it, notice what's going on for you. So again, that physical, behavioural, emotional cues will potentially come up during the conversation. So notice them for yourself. Be aware of what's starting to happen for you in that conversation, and equally notice what's going on for the other person. So you may both start off calm, but things can change as we have that conversation. It's your job as the holder of the conversation to hold that space for the individual as well, and notice what's going on. And to keep them psychologically safe. So if you notice that perhaps they're starting to get angry or annoyed or frustrated, then that's a flag that you're hitting one of those sides on the crucial conversations triangle, and actually you need to stop. So you need to think about bringing the conversation back to a place where it's psychologically safe. You need to share your perspective. So from your point of view, what's the purpose of the conversation? Share your facts, tell your side of the story, how that makes you feel. Keep it calm, stay in perspective, stay objective. And when you're talking, try and start with the least controversial point. So start with something that perhaps is quite small, but factual and objectively positioned, and build up to anything that might be bigger. Don't start with the big stuff first, because it can overwhelm people and not put them in a great place. And then use the most persuasive elements from your path to action, and tell your story. So this is what I've seen, this is what the facts are telling me, this is my experience, this is how it makes me feel. And therefore, this is what I'm beginning to conclude from all the evidence, all the facts, and my version of the story. And then we need to ask for their perspective. So what's their view? So we've given ours, we've told them what it means for us, what we're interpreting from that data. What's their perspective? Listen to their side of the story. Be curious, ask questions. Ask them how they're feeling. Don't assume, don't cut them off, let them speak. Even if you don't agree with them, allow them to speak and stay curious. Stay calm and stay objective, which is really important. If people are feeling or allowed to feel heard, they will feel more valued. And if they feel valued, it's easier to then move on to the next step and agree the way forward. So once you've shared your perspective and what it means for you, you've asked them for their view, their perspective, the reasons perhaps why these things might have been happening, the consequences, what it might be or how it might be perceived by you or the business or colleagues from their perspective. And then you can agree the way forward. So it's about, not necessarily dictating a point of view. Depends on what the conversation is that you're having. There will be times when, in a conversation, you can say to the other person, okay, so we need to agree a way forward. How are we going to deal with this? And it's something that you agree together. There may be times when you might want them, depending on, again, on the conversation, you might want them to tell you how they're going to rectify the situation. And so you're giving them all the decision-making capacity, and your role in it is effectively to just sign off. Or it might be that the sole decision-making perspective within that way forward is you, so that it might be, you're telling them, this is what we need to agree going forward, this is how it will be, or this is what I want, needs to happen. How are we going to do that? What support do you need? What training do you need? How do you make sure that you are catching the bus every day, if there are no other mitigating circumstances, that you are turning up on time? Because ultimately, if we don't, and we've covered off all of the other avenues as to why somebody might not be turning up on time, there may be a different route that we want to perhaps take afterwards. So follow through after that. Once you've agreed the way forward between you, calmly and objectively, get it in writing, and both parties need to agree how we're going to follow up. So that might be, you checking in at the end of the week, or having them check in to you, or milestones or goals, or smart goals. Whatever that checking in process looks like and is appropriate for the conversation and that happens within your business. Checking in and not letting it slide is really important. And what will happen is that if you have those checkpoints in place, you will find it easier next time to have the conversation, because you've already got a starting point to discuss from. So I apologise for going over slightly there. Very, very quick whistle stop tour, as I say, into how to have difficult conversations. If you've liked or like the content, you'd like to know more, just like you to take those questions away with you, and think about, again, in your business, where has this process not been followed? Which bit of that process that I've just shared, where does it fall down most? Is there one area? For me, with the clients that I work with, quite often it's the purpose bit. So why are we having this conversation? And then it's the preparation. Quite often people tend to just go into sharing their perspective and then do the agree the way forward bit. They don't do the other bits around it. So have a think about what is going to be most appropriate in your business or for you as a leader, in order to help you have those difficult conversations and do them well. As a thank you for turning up to the workshop, I have a full-blown 3-hour workshop on this topic. So we go into it in a bit more detail, a bit more depth, get you to work through some scenarios and get you to really think about conversations that you've had, that you want to have, and work those up into conversations that you can take away and then actually have in your workplace. My next one is on the 30th of June. I've got a 10% off offer at the moment as a thank you for attending and listening to this workshop. If you, I'll pop the link in the chat now. If you go onto Eventbrite, that's where you can sign up. At the purchase page, if you pop in on the promotional code TASTER, so capital T and then TASTER, that will give you 10% off of the price. That's currently £120 for 3-hour workshop. There'll also be pre-work to do as well, so I'll send you a pre-work book to do some pre-thinking. Equally, feel free to have a strategy call with me. So I'm offering a free leadership strategy call. If you just want to talk about what's going on for you and your business, very happy to jump on a call and maybe give you some tips and pointers, some guidance, or just have a chat about where you might want to focus your attention and your energy. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping by and sharing, and I hope that has been of some use. So look forward to hearing about the conversations that you're having, and yeah, please stay in touch. Thanks very much. Bye for now.